welcome to Conscious Control, and today we're going to be talking about flow states. Flow states is a very big, very important concept in conscious control and in life in general. And you may have heard of flow states before in the context of someone being in a flow or being in the zone or being ultimately present and in the moment, just acting and reacting effortlessly, just flowing. It's often used to describe athletes, dancers, musicians, artists, business people, just anything that the person is performing a skill that they often practice. And when someone's in a flow, really they're at the peak of their capabilities, and yet when you're watching them, it seems so natural. When someone's in a flow, it seems like there's no thought involved. It seems like they're unconscious. It's this odd balance of performing at your personal best, but also 100% efficiency. There's no hesitation, no thought, no self-doubt, no interference from the ego. You're just flowing. It's quite a mysterious and elusive state to achieve. Many of the greatest performances in history, though, whether they were championship wins or dance performances or just anything really, was probably in the midst of a flow state. And because of this, many athletes and people in general subconsciously chase that feeling for years just to experience those moments of flow, of doing what they love to do. But flow can be found in anything. It's not just limited to sports or the arts. Those are just things that humans intrinsically love doing. And those are things that are easy to observe flow in. But personally, I play basketball and I relate to it really well. Basketball is a sport where the best shooters in the world only shoot 50% in a game, meaning they only make half the shots that they take. Every basketball player experiences days where they just feel uncoordinated and off, and they have days where they feel like they can make any shot they take. And that feeling of being on fire, that feeling of being unconscious and in flow is addicting. It's something we chase. It's something that we know is inside of ourselves. We know we can make that shot because we've made it 100 times before, but will you make it this time? And that's why flow is so valuable. It's so hard to achieve, but it's so valuable. The concept of flow was first proposed by this guy. I'm not going to try and say his name, it's a mouthful. But in 1990, he wrote his book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, where he proposed the idea after working with many different people at the top of their professions, whether it was sports or musicians, entrepreneurs, doctors, whatever, just high performers and elite talents in their field. His goal was essentially to answer what makes the best perform the best. Now, Mihaly used his research to outline the idea of flow, which essentially was this zone of optimal performance where the challenges in front of you are difficult enough to push you, but your skills are also proportionately high to complete that challenge. It's a zone where it's hard enough to be difficult and keep your interest and you're not bored with the task, but you're also competent enough that it doesn't become too daunting, too anxiety inducing. And when you land in this zone, when you find that perfect mix, you become so focused, so heavily engaged in the task that your ego, your thoughts, all the extraneous thought processes in your mind go silent, and you're allowed to be fully present and engulfed in the moment. And because of this, you're not only performing at your personal best, your personal 100%, which everybody should know that it's pretty difficult to perform at your personal best, especially under pressure. The people who can perform at their best under pressure in high stakes moments are usually the ones who succeed. But you're also in the moment learning more efficiently. You're taking more information in and processing it more quickly. You're enjoying the experience more. And internally, you're at peace with only one goal in mind, which is to complete the task or to do whatever it is that you're doing. And you're actually effectively executing that. You're in a flow. It's inherently peaceful. It's inherently satisfying and addicting. And also your sense of time is altered when you're in a flow. Moments seem longer as you're present for each passing moment. The time in between each moment and the time that each moment lasts feels like it's stretched out because you're watching it pass by. And yet, as those moments blur together over time, the hours seem shorter. You can be in a flow state doing something for 2 hours, and yet it felt like 30 minutes because all of those moments blurred together and you were essentially subconscious. But we'll talk about that later. Now, when it comes to flow in research, after writing his book, Mihaly made a bunch of contributions to sports psychology, positive psychology, and just the field in general, but ultimately he was pretty limited by the technology of his time. Now, in the last 10 or 15 years, recently, neuroscience and brain imaging has allowed a bit more insight into the concept of flow, testing some of these principles in psychology that he proposed, and allowing us to get some real data behind it and a better understanding of what happens, how to achieve it, etc. But it's still not easy to study. I mean, the thing about flow states is that they're extremely delicate. They're a state of consciousness, and that means that you can go in and out of them very easily, But there's also a spectrum to them. You can be on the border of a flow or in a light flow. You could be fully intensely in the zone, fully in a flow. You can fall anywhere in between on this spectrum. And it's extremely nuanced and likely ranges from not only person to person, but also task to task. So most of the time that it happens subconsciously outside of the person's awareness due to the nature of a flow state. This makes it extremely hard to study in a controlled setting while having someone hooked up to a brain scanner. You can't play a full game of basketball and be hooked up to a PET scan at the same time. So much of this research is being done anecdotally through psychology and self-report and surveys and speculation based on personal experiences. Not to say that that type of research doesn't have value, it does. Human intuition is extremely powerful, but it's not empirical, it's not data. We can't see the brain while someone's in a flow state unless it's artificially induced. And that makes it really difficult to study in terms of real life and moment to moment. But what that also means is that we're still piecing the puzzle together. Nobody really has all the answers. Nobody really knows exactly what a flow state is, exactly what constitutes it, exactly how to get in and out of one, and what the exact effects are. Like I said, most of the research is being done anecdotally, which means that we have some room for self-exploration here. We can only use the information available to us to try and see the puzzle one piece at a time. So in part 2, I'm going to go over the specific aspects of a flow state, the agreed upon conditions required to get into one, and the characteristics of a flow state and how to know whether or not you've actually experienced one or not, or whether or not you recently experienced one. So stay tuned. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.